My name is Sarah Whitman. I'm 27 years old, and my life took a turn I never saw coming in less than a single day. When the familiar front door clicked shut behind me with a cold finality, I had nothing but an old suitcase, a nearly dead phone, and a heart that was both shattered and numb from disappointment. My parents called it a lesson in adulthood. I called it the most effective way to make a daughter give up on the idea of family love. They threw me out on the very day the universe either played a cruel joke or handed me something they never dared to imagine. That afternoon, I still thought getting kicked out for refusing to work as an accountant for my dad's friend was the biggest tragedy of my life. They told me, "You can't survive selling handmade crafts online, Sarah." My mom said it more gently, but every word cut like a blade. "You need to stop dreaming and start living in reality. No one makes a living from those shiny rocks you lay out in your room." They didn't care that I had hundreds of five-star reviews from customers. They didn't want to understand that there were days I made nearly $400 from jewelry crafted with my own hands. What did they want? A resume like my sister's, an MBA, a corporate job, and a traditional engagement ring. I had none of those. So they pushed me out literally into the rain. By the end of the month, we're shutting off your phone line. The car we co-signed is no longer in your name, my father declared like he was reading a lease agreement. I said nothing mostly because I couldn't find a word polite enough to use when my heart felt like it was splintering into pieces. I don't blame them for not understanding me. I just didn't expect them to abandon me so quickly. That night, I dragged my suitcase through the cold rain to a roadside motel on the outskirts of Tampa, somewhere I never imagined myself staying. When the front desk clerk asked how many nights I had to force myself not to cry, "Just one," I answered, sliding my last $85 onto the counter. I had less than $300 left in my pocket and a maxed out credit card. My life was slipping away like the rainwater running down the curb. In the room, I peeled off my soaked coat, shivering. I sat down on the bed and remembered it was Friday, the day my grandma and I used to buy lottery tickets together. Ever since she passed away 8 months ago, I kept buying one ticket every week, using the numbers she'd written in her old leather notebook. It 11 to 6, 34, 42, 47, 55. I laughed, a strange, half sea-crazed, half joyful sound. Then I whispered like I was speaking to the one person who had always believed in me, even when the world didn't. I won, Grandma, not just the lottery life. I was born in Gainesville, Florida, a quiet town with gray rooftops, neatly trimmed lawns, and lives planned out like interstate maps. My father, Walter Whitman, is the chief accountant for a construction firm. My mother, Ruth, manages the city hospital's administration. They're the kind of people who, if happiness could be charted, would choose a flat line. Steady, uneventful, predictable. I was never like that. Since I was 8, I've been obsessed with the way colored stones catch the light, how tiny strands of metal sparkle in the sun. While other kids played at the park or watched cartoons, I'd spend hours with a bead kit my grandma gave me, threading each strand carefully as if the whole world rested in my tiny hands. My grandmother, Elise, was the only one who didn't think it was pointless. She used to say, "You don't need anyone to understand you as long as you understand yourself." Every time my dad saw me hunched over my wires and stones, he let out an exaggerated sigh like an angel had just lost its wings. "You should be studying math, sweetie. Don't waste your time on this." And my mom would chuckle, half sympathetic, half dismissive. "Jewelry is pretty, but it won't pay the electric bill." I still remember the first bracelet I made with rose quartz and gave to my mom. Her eyes briefly lit up in surprise, but she set it down on the table like it was a child's toy. But Grandma Lee was different. She wore a pair of earrings I made from seashells all summer the year I turned 12. My granddaughter's going to be a famous jeweler one day. She told anyone who complimented them, making me blush with embarrassment and pride. When I got into college, my parents practically forced me to major in accounting. "Just get a degree, you can do what you want later." I obeyed partly out of exhaustion, partly because I still lived under their roof. But in my first year, I secretly opened an Etsy shop under the alias Grace Studio, a blend of Alyssa's name and the word Grace, which she always told me to carry in my heart no matter what life threw at me. 4 years later, I graduated with honors in accounting and landed a job at a financial firm called Carmichael and Wells. The office overlooked the freeway, and my desk was constantly piled with tax files and endless strings of numbers. I felt like an ant trapped in a glass box, tapping at the walls with nowhere to go. By day, I was a model employee. By night, I returned to myself. Sarah of the shimmering stones, the molten metals, the copper wires bent into designs only I could see. I often worked past 2 in the morning, my fingers calloused from pliers and files, my eyes burning from lack of sleep. But I didn't stop. On weekends, I'd take my pieces to the local craft market downtown. Once a tourist couple from Boston bought 3 items at once and asked if I had a website. "We've never seen anything this unique in the Northeast," they said, and I beamed with joy. I began getting regular customers. Word of mouth spread. Small orders trickled in. My Etsy page started filling with 5-star reviews. But when I told my mom about it, she only said, "Still doesn't beat an accountant's salary, does it?" I didn't argue. I just smiled. The truth is, I hadn't dared to believe I could really make a living from it. But I knew one thing. Every time I picked up my pliers and stones, I didn't feel tired. Then one day, Grandma Lee called me over. She handed me an old wooden box filled with the stones she had collected over a lifetime, along with a whispered message full of hope. "This is for the only person in the family who knows how to see beauty in the smallest things." I hugged the box to my chest, tears falling faster than I could wipe them away. 1 month later, she passed away. I didn't tell my parents about her final gift. I kept it for myself. As if keeping a piece of her soul, as if holding on to the one belief that this dream wasn't completely foolish. I kept going to work, kept smiling, kept calling home on time, but something inside me was growing like a seed pushing upward through rocky soil. I knew sooner or later I would have to choose. And when that day came, there would be no turning back. What I didn't expect was that the choice would push me out of my home in the middle of a storm. After 6 months of juggling a full-time accounting job while trying to grow my handmade jewelry brand, Grace Studio, I was reaching burnout. But just as I neared the edge, something miraculous started happening. Short videos I posted about my jewelry making process began to go viral online. A small boutique in Orlando emailed me about a potential partnership. And for the first time, my monthly income from jewelry surpassed my office salary. That's when I made the decision my parents would call career suicide. I quit my job at Carmichael and Wells. I spent a whole week preparing how to break the news to them. I printed revenue reports, created a detailed business plan. I even wrote out bullet point answers to questions they might ask. I figured if I was rational and professional enough, they would see my reasoning. That dinner, I waited until the pot roast was nearly done before speaking. "I've turned in my resignation," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm going to focus full-time on my jewelry business." My mom's first question was, "You quit for good, not just temporarily." My dad put his spoon down with a loud clink that made me flinch. "This is a joke, right?" "No, I have a clear plan and revenue is growing steadily. I have the numbers right here." "We don't need numbers," he interrupted. "We need you to come to your senses." My mom looked at me as if I had just announced I was joining a traveling circus. "Sarah, you're a smart girl. You have a degree, a stable job, health insurance. Why throw that away for shiny trinkets?" I clenched my fists. They're not just shiny trinkets. They're art. They're work. They're how I live truthfully. My dad stood up and walked straight into his office. Before I could process what was happening, he returned holding the revenue report I had printed, the one I had left in my folder in my room. "I found this on your desk this morning and your idea journal too." I read them, he said matter-of-factly. "You read my journal?" I asked, stunned. "That's personal. Those were unfinished ideas. That's private. If you live under this roof, everything is family business." He replied without a hint of regret. "We need to know what you're thinking when you start making irrational choices like this." It felt like someone had crushed my chest. "I'm not a child who needs monitoring," I said, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. "I'm an adult and my decisions, whether you approve or not, are mine." "Then live like an adult," my dad said, eyes locked on mine. "If that's the path you choose, then take responsibility. Pack your things, be out of this house by morning." A suffocating silence fell over the kitchen. My mom turned her face away but said nothing. I looked at them. These 2 people who had taught me to ride a bike, baked cookies with me on holidays, bought me my first computer for design school. And now they stood like strangers. Something inside me broke. I left the dinner table, walked upstairs, and tried not to cry. In the room that had once been lit with string lights and filled with sketches, I opened my suitcase. The one Grandma Lee gave me when I turned 24, saying, "Save this for the day you walk out on your own." I never imagined that day would come like this. I packed only the essentials clothes for a few days, my jewelry tools, my old leather wallet, and the notebook filled with my dreams. I counted the cash in my wallet, $342, and a nearly maxed out credit card. I sat on the bed holding the first bracelet I'd ever made my eyes blurry. Then I told myself, I'm not giving up. I'm just leaving to start again. The next morning, my dad didn't see me off. My mom handed me a paper bag with a sandwich and a bottle of water, then quietly shut the door behind me without a word. I rolled my suitcase outside the early sunlight glaring overhead. It was just me, the suitcase, and a fragile belief that there was space in this world for someone who dared to believe in herself. I didn't drive away because the car, still under my parents' name, was sitting in their garage. They knew that when they kicked me out. The only thing that carried me away from that quiet, cold neighborhood was a city bus. Old, nearly empty, with a damp, musty smell soaked into the worn vinyl seats. I got off near Edgewater Drive in front of a motel called Lakeview Inn. The neon sign flickered from years of wind and rain, only lighting up 3 letters at NN. The place looked exactly like a movie scene where the main character had just lost everything and was on the edge of a breakdown. It matched my mood perfectly. I stepped into the lobby. Behind the counter stood a woman with loosely tousled gray hair and reading glasses sliding down her nose. The faded name tag on her shirt read Gladys. Need a room? She asked, glancing briefly at my soaked clothes and the scuffed suitcase at my side. Just one night, I replied my voice. Pass your card, she asked again. No judgment, no pity in her tone. I pulled out 7 $10 bills and a 20 cash. This is all I've got. Gladys counted quickly, then nodded. Room number 7, heat and hot water, no TV. Here's your key. The room wasn't as bad as I expected. Just faded yellow walls with peeling paint, a heavy brown curtain, and a single bed with a faded purple-blue sheet stained with old marks. I hung my wet coat on a broken hanger, changed into dry clothes, and sat on the floor with my back against the wall. Beside me was the suitcase, the last thing that reminded me I still had something that was mine. I thought back to all those Friday nights with Grandma Elise at the gas station down the street buying lottery tickets together. One for me, one for you, she used to say with a smile, placing the tickets in my wallet. Sometimes miracles come in the form of numbers. After she passed, I kept playing not because I believed I'd win, but because it felt like holding on to her a little longer. I pulled out my phone and opened the lottery app, but the message on the screen made my heart sink. System under maintenance. Please check again in 6 to 8 hours. Even the smallest thing, a little connection to her, was postponed tonight. I set the phone down, turned off the light, crawled under the blanket, and curled up on the unfamiliar bed. No one knew I was here. No one asked where I was. No texts from my parents. No comfort from my younger brother. Just the steady patter of rain on the metal roof like a rhythm marking my unraveling. The next morning, I woke up at 7:30 to the sound of a truck horn somewhere down the street. Still groggy, I reached for my phone to check the lottery system again. Part habit, part effort to remind myself today was just another bad day in a long string of them. But then the screen lit up with a new notification. Congratulations, your numbers match the Florida Power Draw jackpot, $81 million. I blinked. No, there had to be some mistake. I pulled the crumpled ticket from my wallet. Grandma Elise had always warned, never let your ticket get torn. I checked the numbers. 11, 26, 34, 42, 47, 55. I double-checked on the app, then opened my browser and visited the official website, then typed the numbers into Google. All matched. Not a single number was off. I didn't know how long I sat there. My heart pounded so hard I had to hunch over to breathe, my hands shaking. I pressed the call button on the Florida Lottery office website. A calm female voice came on. Florida Lottery office, how can I assist you? I think I won. Big. I'd like to confirm. She asked for the serial number ticket barcode and a few details. I gave them, pausing often to catch my breath. There was a moment of silence. Then she said slowly but clearly, As Whitman, I confirm that your ticket matches all 6 winning numbers for the jackpot. Congratulations. The estimated amount before taxes is $81 million. I didn't hear the rest. My vision blurred. My body went cold. But it felt like I was burning from the inside. On the single bed in room 7 of the Lakeview Inn, I had just become a millionaire. And my parents still had no idea that the daughter they called unstable was now holding a secret that could turn everything upside down. After the confirmation call, I sat frozen on the motel bed for nearly an hour, like any movement might cause the dream to vanish. Finally, I snapped out of it. The first thing I did was sign the back of the ticket. Grandma Elise had been firm about that. Always sign it first. Don't let anyone steal what belongs to you. The second thing, stay silent. I knew if word got out before I had a solid plan, chaos would follow. I changed clothes, pulled back the curtain, and looked down at the rain-soaked parking lot. The sky was gray, but something bright had started stirring inside me. And I knew I needed help, but not from my parents, not from anyone who had dismissed my dream. I walked back to the front desk. Gladys, the motel manager, was counting change in a tin box. I stood for a moment, then said quietly, "Is Gladys, I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll keep it to yourself." She looked up, squinting at me. "Go on, sweetheart. Do you know someone who could help me manage finances? Someone discreet, trustworthy." Gladys set the box down. "My nephew Marcus used to work at a big finance firm, now runs his own practice in Orlando. Solid guy, doesn't talk much. You'd like him." I nodded, hesitant. "Would you mind calling him for me, but don't mention why Gladys didn't ask further." She just picked up the landline and dialed. 15 minutes later, I had an appointment with Marcus at his small office on the second floor of an old building near Lake Eola. Marcus Abrams was in his early 40s, tall and lean with neatly combed dark brown hair. He greeted me with a soft smile and a glass of water. "I heard Aunt Gladys said you needed advice about unexpected finances," he asked, getting straight to the point. I took a deep breath and laid the signed lottery ticket on the table. He leaned forward, eyes widening slightly. "I just confirmed it with the Florida lottery office this morning." "It's real," I said. "But I haven't told anyone, and I want to keep it quiet for as long as possible." Marcus considered my words for a moment, then passed me a folder. "We can set up an anonymous trust. I'll act as the legal representative, and you can appoint a manager if you wish. That way your name won't be made public." I didn't need long to think. Let's do that. For the next 3 hours, Marcus explained every step in detail, receiving the funds through the bank, investing, most of it in a safe portfolio, and keeping a portion in cash to start building a new life. I listened, took notes, and signed each document with hands still trembling from disbelief. "How much do you want to access immediately?" he asked. "I need enough to leave the motel and start over. Nothing extravagant, just independence." I paused for now. $200,000? Marcus didn't even blink. "All right, we'll disperse it through a new personal account. I'll help you open Unlin to any of your old information." When I left his office holding a folder of financial documents and a brand new bank card, I felt like a different person. Still Sarah, but for the first time in my life, a version not dependent on anyone's approval. That evening, I returned to Lakeview Inn to gather my things. Gladys handed me a small cookie and smiled. "I don't know what's going on, but your eyes look a little brighter now." I laughed, moved. "Thank you. One day I'll tell you the whole story." Before leaving, I left a thick envelope in the drawer at the front desk, along with a handwritten note for the one who believed in me, even without knowing who I was. Month's rent paid in advance for every room. The next day, I went to Baldwin Park, a lakeside neighborhood with small but elegant apartment buildings, large windows and balconies with just the right amount of light for crafting. I chose a third floor or studio in a quiet corner near a bookstore, paid the full year's rent upfront in cash through the new account. I'd bought just enough to live. Clothes, a good bed, a work desk, and a jewelry-making toolkit I'd never dared to dream of owning before. Everything was neat, minimal. I avoided anything flashy or showy because I had nothing to prove to anyone. And that night, I sat alone in my new apartment, a cup of tea in hand, a clean wooden table in front of me, and bright-colored stones spread out before me. It took me exactly 3 days to finish setting up my new workshop inside the little apartment in Baldwin Park. Everything was just right. A long table by the window, wooden shelves lined with tools and jars of semi-precious stones sorted carefully by color palette. Morning sunlight streamed through the white curtains, casting soft shadows on the first sketches of the collection I was about to create. I decided not to keep the old name Egra Studio that belonged to a time when I had to hide, when I had to dodge judgment. Now I wanted to build something clear, bold, but still full of love, and I knew instantly what the name should be. Elise & Co. Not legacy, not jewelry. By Sarah, just Elise, my grandmother's name. The only person who ever saw the light in me when the rest of the world saw only strangeness. An anchor for all the people like me, the ones called different, but who chose to keep going. I hired a small local team to design the website. One of them was Zoe, a senior majoring in media design who lived in the same apartment complex. "I've never worked on a jewelry brand before," she said, eyes glowing. "But I can make it unforgettable." I believed her from the first moment we met. We worked day and night for 3 weeks to launch the Elise & Cummy website. Cream white background, minimalist black text, natural light photos of quartz turquoise and lapis lazuli shot against raw wood surfaces. I invested in an initial collection of 8 pieces, 4 bracelets, 2 necklaces, a pair of earrings, and a hairpin. Each piece was tied to a memory with Grandma. The evergreen promise bracelet inspired by her backyard garden. The sunlit porch necklace capturing the afternoon glow where she used to read by the window. When the website officially went live, I trembled like I'd stepped on stage in a dress I sewed myself. I didn't make a big announcement, just one small post on the Instagram account, formerly known as Egra Studio, now renamed. I didn't expect much, just hoped for a few small orders to feel like I wasn't alone. Only 2 days after the website went live, Zoe called me in the middle of the afternoon, her voice a mix of excitement and disbelief. "Hey, someone from LA just bought all 3 pieces from your lapis collection. The name on the order is Juliana Ray." I nearly dropped the cup of tea in my hand. That name wasn't unfamiliar. Juliana Ray was an A-list actress known not just for her acting, but for being incredibly selective with fashion, especially handmade accessories. "Are you sure?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "I'm sure. The order's verified through the system, and the shipping address is her rep's office in Westwood." I was silent for a few seconds, then I laughed. It felt like the painful journey I'd been on had finally opened a real path forward. That evening, I wrapped each item carefully in tissue paper, placed them in boxes with the Elise & Cumby logo, and included a handwritten note. "Thank you for giving an independent artisan like me a chance. Each of these stones holds a story. I hope they accompany you in beautiful moments." 3 days later, Alice Coe's Instagram account got a tag notification. A photo of Juliana Ray in a white dress wearing the Ocean Whispers hairpin with the caption, "Sometimes the most powerful pieces are the quietest. Thank you at Elise Cumby Jewelry." Overnight, the website received more than 500 new visits. Order emails flooded in. Among them was a message from the stylist of a popular television show asking about seasonal collaboration. I turned on my laptop and stared at the screen like it was a door that had just opened to a brand new world. I knew without that lottery ticket, this journey would have been 100 times harder. But I also knew if I hadn't been ready, if I hadn't cried silently while bending copper wire at night, hadn't packed orders at 2:00 a.m., hadn't believed in each tiny stone, then even if the opportunity had arrived, I wouldn't have been able to hold on to it. I didn't reach out to my family after leaving home. Still, Gainesville turned out to be smaller than I thought. One Saturday morning early in the month, I stopped by a lakeside cafe to pick up a special order, a lapis lazuli bracelet I'd just finished for a journalist client. The moment I walked in, I caught a familiar glance from behind the coffee bar. Timothy, my younger brother by 2 years, the one who used to sit next to me through high school play. Lego read books with me, and the one who silently watched me get thrown out of the house without saying a word. I had imagined this reunion in my head dozens of times, but I still wasn't prepared for the way my heartbeat faltered. "Is that you?" Timothy asked, standing up so fast he nearly spilled the cappuccino in his hand. I replied, my voice calmer than I expected. "You look totally different." His eyes scanned my mandarin-collared white blouse, the elegant watch on my wrist, the pale leather shoes. I knew he was trying to guess. I didn't help him. "Have you been?" I asked. "Good. Where are you living these days, temporarily, in Baldwin Park near the lake?" I sipped my tea. "Are you here for work?" "No, just a coincidence." "But Mom and Dad are really worried about you." Timothy looked at me clearly, wanting to say more but unsure where to begin. Finally, he sighed. "Would you be willing to see them?" I didn't answer right away, but that look, the same look from a little brother who once hid my bad test paper because he didn't want me to get scolded, was still there. I inclined my head, signaling agreement. Tomorrow, 10:00, bring them to my apartment. But let me be clear, no tears, no drama. At 10:00 on Sunday morning, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw Timothy standing between my parents, Walter and Ruth. They were speechless for the first 3 seconds when they saw me. My small apartment was filled with sunlight, warm wooden floors, a display shelf on the wall with pieces of jewelry I was finishing, and a photo frame of Grandma Elise and me on the bookcase. Ruth whispered, "Sarah." I invited them in. My father hesitated for a moment before stepping over the threshold. We sat across from each other in the living room. I poured tea. No one said anything for several minutes. Then my father spoke up. "This apartment, it's not cheap." "No," I replied, "and I paid a year in advance." His eyes narrowed. My mother looked around the room, finally resting her gaze on a box with the Elise and Cumby logo on the table. "This is your jewelry." I nodded. I started my own brand. Timothy glanced at me, then said softly, "You really have changed." The air grew tense. Finally, my father asked, "Where did you get the money to do all this?" Rising from my seat, I reached into the drawer and retrieved the laminated lottery ticket, carefully preserved since the day I won. I sat it on the table without a word. I won the power draw, $81 million. After taxes, over $30 million. I bought the ticket the day I was kicked out of the house. My mother covered her mouth. My father stared at the ticket, then at me. "You're joking." "No. And I wasn't planning to tell you, but if we're being honest today, I'm not going to hide it." My father leaned back in his chair like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "So you're rich now, rich in money, yes, but also rich in the experience of being dismissed, violated, and thrown out by my own family in the middle of a rainstorm." I said, not raising my voice, but letting every word land like a blade. "That's something I won't forget." Tears welled up in my mother's eyes. "We just wanted you to be stable. I don't need stability if it means living a life I don't believe in. What I need is respect." I looked directly at my parents. "From now on, if you want to have a relationship with me, you need to accept 3 things. 1, I am independent. 2, I don't need money or financial advice. And 3, if anyone tries to control my life again, I will walk away for good." He dipped his head slightly, eyes soft. "You're right. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you." My father said nothing. My mother wiped her tears. "We'll try. Just please don't disappear from our lives." I took a slow breath. "I don't want to cut ties, but I need to know. I'm no longer living to make anyone else comfortable." 1 month later, I sent an email to the whole family. No calls, no texts, just a subject line. "Sunday dinner. If you want a fresh start, this is the invitation." At 7:00 p.m., the doorbell rang. Timothy stepped in first, followed by my parents. My mother brought a box of blueberry muffins, the kind she used to bake every holiday when I was little. She didn't say it, but I knew it was her way of offering a truce. I set the food on the table. Homemade pasta, roasted vegetable salad, small cinnamon apple tarts. The air was still awkward at first, but not as tense as before. Timothy introduced his girlfriend, a young woman with softly curled brown hair and bright eyes that looked like they always had something kind to say. "This is Lena, my girlfriend. She once received a scholarship from an art fund called the Elise Foundation." I looked up. "Elise Foundation." Lena smiled. "It's the one you fund, right? Named after the grandmother from your jewelry designs." My heart was moved. Though Elise Foundation had only launched a few months earlier, it had already started awarding small grants to young artists without family support. I never imagined it would end up connecting me with my own relatives. I saw her application and thought it really stood out. Timothy added, "Then I thought instead of just working in an office, I could help you run the foundation from a financial angle." I looked at my brother, so different from the boy who stayed silent when I was kicked out of the house. "If you truly mean that, I'd welcome it." The table fell quiet for a few seconds. Then my mother set down her fork and looked directly at me. "Sarah, I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I know what we did before left wounds that don't heal easily, but I'm trying to make things right." I kept quiet, a subtle tilt of my head urging her to speak. "I signed up for a pottery class." She said, her lips trembling a bit. "Every Wednesday at the City Arts Center." I want to try understanding a small part of the world you lived in when I never bothered to see. My father stayed silent until near the end of dinner. Then he reached out and gently touched the bracelet on my wrist. A new design with faceted, smoky gay stones and a delicate silver cord. "You made this?" he asked. "It's beautiful, not flashy, but it has depth, like it tells a story." I was a little surprised. My father had never called any of my work art. In that moment, he didn't need to say anything more. I knew I had just heard a quiet apology from a man who rarely spoke his feelings. That night, after everyone had gone, I washed the dishes slowly. The kitchen light was warm and soft, and the scent of cinnamon tarts still lingered. I didn't feel entirely at peace, but I did feel something new. Hope. A few weeks later, Timothy officially took on the role of financial coordinator for the Elise Foundation. He never touched the lottery money. I managed that myself. He just handled grant records, reviewed proposals, and advised on budgeting. Lena became my unofficial creative advisor. She connected me with young artists who needed more than just financial support. They needed someone to believe in them. My mom started sending me photos of her first ceramic pieces. A lopsided teacup, a cracked porcelain plate, but each one had a name. This one's called Patience. This one is Learning to Look Back. And the last one is Lost, but never gone. As for my dad, he regularly sent me links to articles about the high-end handmade goods market. One time he called just to ask, "Have you ever thought about submitting your work to the Museum of Applied Arts? They're opening a new wing. I don't know what the future holds for my family, but I do know this. I no longer need their approval. And maybe because of that, they're slowly learning what it means to truly respect me." 1 year later, the first exhibition of Elise and Coney was held at the Nora Whitmore Gallery in downtown Orlando. The walls displayed close-up photographs of signature designs, all named after memories of Grandma Elise porch at Dusk Lucky Sewing Box on Scent Letter. In the center hall stood a rotating display table featuring the collection I spent 4 months creating. Roots and Wings. Each piece carried the story of an artist who had once been dismissed, once pressured to choose a safe path, once believed that passion was a luxury. Among them was Lena Timothy's girlfriend, now an official member of the creative team. There was Janelle, a Black painter who used to work 3 jobs to support her little sister, but never stopped painting at night. And Thomas, a wood sculptor, living in an old truck in Jacksonville, who carved the words Elise Foundation into the wooden sign hanging at the exhibit's entrance today. In total, 27 young artists received grants from the Elise Foundation within 12 months. Not just money, but belief. I stepped onto the small platform holding the microphone. A soft light lit my face. The room was silent. "My name is Sarah Whitman. 1 year ago, I was kicked out of my house with a suitcase and $342. I'm not sharing this to shock anyone or to ask for pity. I'm sharing it to prove this. Success doesn't come from luck. Luck is just the bridge, the bricks that build the road. Those are the nights you couldn't sleep because you still believed in something everyone else called meaningless." I paused, took a deep breath, and continued. "Yes, I won the lottery. But that money didn't create Elise & Co. It just sped things up. It gave me space to bring to life what had already existed in my mind since I was 12 years old. When my grandmother first wore the seashell earrings I made with my own hands, a round of applause erupted. But what choked me up was seeing my father standing at the back of the room next to my mother. He didn't clap loudly, but the pride in his eyes said everything. After the speech, I stepped outside the hall for some air. Timothy followed, handed me a glass of water, and said, "Grandma Lee would be so proud if she saw you today." I tilted my head in silent agreement, the edges of my eyes beginning to sting. I think she knew all along. We remained still, letting the silence speak for us. The Orlando night was gentle, warm yellow lights lining the sidewalks. I looked up at the sky where the storm clouds of the past had cleared. The following weekend, I returned to the old house in Gainesville. My mom said she had cleared out my former bedroom. It was now her mini pottery studio. My dad sat in the kitchen reading the newspaper, seeming more at ease than before. On his wrist was a bracelet I had given him, leather with a single black stone in the center. My mom was setting out teacups she had just finished molding. One of them had the word freedom engraved on it. Before leaving, I stopped by the old cemetery where Grandma Elise rested beneath the maple trees. I laid down a small cloth and placed one of my hairpins on the soil. Deep ocean blue lapis lazuli stone trimmed in quiet silver. Z whispered, "You were right. This world still needs more beauty." But what I didn't know was that I could be the one to create it. The breeze was gentle. I stayed there for a long time. No phone, no thoughts of work, just listening to the stillness. Sarah's story isn't just a journey from despair to success. It's proof that true wealth isn't measured by money, but by living in alignment with your passion and values. In today's world where family and societal pressure can easily cause us to lose ourselves, Sarah chose to rise, set new boundaries, and use her success to pave the way for others. That's not luck. It's courage. And sometimes courage is where every miracle begins. What are your thoughts on Sarah's journey? Would you choose passion if it meant giving up everything else? Share your feelings in the comments and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt family stories and meaningful life lessons.